Hi and welcome to OCD Live. I'm Greymond, and today we're going to get to some questions because I got quite a few in the email. If you have a question you would like to ask and I will answer it live, you can do so in the chat window on the side and I will answer them as I get them. Okay, so the first question I got is, just a second. Okay, what if it turns out to be true? So this question I get asked a lot by people. The person is worried that what if the thought is, what if they kind of disregard the thought and it turns out to be true, and basically their life would be over and all of this kind of stuff. So, you know, I have a lot of experience talking to people. I mean, I've been doing this for what, last how many years, right? And I talk to clients every single day. Like I said before, I talk for at least 3 hours every day. So besides all of the other stuff that I do, which is emails and all the other additional kind of not directly talking, but online conversations with clients as well. And I can tell you that it never turns out to be true. Never. Not once have I heard it turning out to be true. And I'm not really kind of like trying to give you reassurance, because reassurance is bad. But at the same time, you need to understand that these thoughts of, well, what if it turns out to be true, so I better do reassurance, are irrational. They're not logical. And even from your past experience, how many times you've had a very similar thought and none of them turned out to be true then, so they're not going to turn out to be true now. So you just kind of have to keep it in perspective that all of these thoughts are false, and OCD is basically just trying to get you to react with anxiety again by sending you the thought of, well, what if it's true one day, and all of this kind of stuff. So just really focus on not reacting, because the more you react with fear and with reassurance of any type, the stronger signal you're sending to your brain that this thought is true. And every time you send the thought to your brain that the thought is true, your brain takes this to mean that that this is real and dangerous, and you need to it needs to send you more of these similar thoughts. So basically, I can only show you the door. You have to walk through it. You have to make sure that you're not doing reassurance. And if you don't do reassurance, if you refuse to, you are saying to your mind that these thoughts are false. They're not necessary for my life, and I'm not gonna react to any more of them. So it's very, very, very important for you to make sure that that you're not reacting to these thoughts with fear, because fear is what keeps OCD going. So the more fear, the worse these thoughts will get. Okay, another question I have here is that I work around many OCD triggers. Should I switch my job? In short, and we've talked about it yesterday if you guys missed that, no, you should not switch your job, because if you switch your job, first of all, the thoughts are not going to go away. They're just going to switch to something else. If you stay home and if you barricade the door and if you stay in your room and if you don't leave the house at all, you will get more thoughts. You will get, even if it can't find any triggers in the present, it's going to find its triggers from the past or from the future. The only way you can escape OCD is by stopping reassurance, no matter what the topic. Is it about the past? Is it about the present? Is it about the future? Is it about your job? It doesn't matter. I know that when you're in a situation where you have to go somewhere where you get active triggers all the time, the best kind of, not the best solution, but the most kind of rational solution that a person will have is that, well, they just can't work here. It's not compatible. But that's not true, because there's no actual real danger. There's no real situation. All of these situations are OCD fears. They're not actually dangerous. But if you keep quitting everything because OCD is telling you that this thought is dangerous, then you're just going to get yourself worse and worse and worse. So you really kind of have to buckle down and say, I'm refusing to deal with this anymore. So, okay. Oh, another thing too is that just like I said, like there's no way to kind of escape OCD unless you actively say that I'm refusing reassurance. And when I say reassurance, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I mean trying to prove to yourself that the thought is not true and that you are safe. All of these ways of proving that you're safe, basically, what you're doing while you're proving it to yourself, you're sending a message to your mind that this thought is very, very important. And your mind says, okay, you're sending me a message that this thought is important, because why would you seek reassurance or avoid or do compulsions against a non-important thought? So obviously you're seeking reassurance from an important thought, so I better send you more of these thoughts. See, that part of the mind does not understand that you have OCD. It only understands what you're doing. So it sees your actions and interprets that to mean if the situation is dangerous or not. But when it comes to OCD, we're just reacting to things that are not dangerous, but that you really kind of just fear. And once you do this once, it becomes a snowball effect where your mind sends you even scarier thought, and it's more harder to disregard, and the anxiety is stronger, and it gets more and more difficult each time. So just really, and the same is true as well if you're or the opposite is true as well if you're disregarding the thoughts. That you get a thought, you say, okay, this is not important to my life, I'm not dealing with this anymore, I'm moving on, right? And your mind says, okay, this person is reacting that way to the thought, must mean that the thought is not important, since again, we're only keeping in the forefront of our minds important thoughts. So you're not keeping it at the front of your mind, you're kind of pushing it away. So it must mean it's not important, I'm not going to send the thought again. And that's how you get over OCD. It's very, very simple in theory and very difficult to do in practice, because in practice you have to do it every day, every moment, I would say, of every day. So it becomes difficult, but I'm telling you, like, I went through it, I overcame it. So many of my clients got over OCD. You can do this. You really can do this. You just have to keep trying. And if you fail one day, who cares? Try again, try again, try again until you feel better. Because once you start to feel better and you see improvement, it's just gonna help you keep going. And it's funny that, well, it's not really funny, but it it's interesting to see that, like, when the person starts out having OCD and their OCD is very severe and they think that this is the worst, and then they go through the recovery process and say a month later their OCD is only half of what it was in the beginning, and they think that that half is just the worst it could possibly get, but they don't remember how it was when they first started, right? So we always think that today's situation and how much anxiety we have is the worst, but you know it will just continue to improve, and you will get to a point where you have like anxiety. Just it's good to keep like a journal of how you feel, so you kind of take note of if it's working for you or not. But you will get to anxiety where it's like 1 out of 10, and then at that point it's not even anxiety, you can just ignore it, and then it'll go away completely. So it's just, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling like you'll never recover, understand that I felt the same way. Most of my clients felt the same way, but they recover, and you can recover. I'm doing this show because I want to help people, and I'm here for you every night, 11 to 11:30 p.m. Eastern. If you have a question, if something's not working for you, if you're having a hard day, you can come here and just ask a question, or just come here and listen. Um, but because like that, I find that generally speaking, there needs to be much more help with OCD than there currently is. So and it's just, I find that the doctors half the time don't know what they're talking about. If you have a good doctor, just stick with them, because there's so many ones that are just, they don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're doing, and a lot of the times they'll give the person reassurance and make the person worse over time because they're constantly giving them reassurance. So anyways, I went too into the doctor's thing, and now we're gonna go to the next question. Can alcohol make my OCD worse? Okay, with regards to alcohol, first of all, I'm coming from a position of a non-drinker, and that's kind of my personal choice for myself. But again, I'm not against drinking per se. I don't drink myself. I do see a lot of the time people who have OCD and who have been drinking have OCD feel worse the next day. But I think that that has a lot to do with just because when you're drinking, you feel like a little bit, kind of like you're losing a little bit of control sometimes, and OCD really plays into that to give the person a sense of like an obsession, like a sense of a thought, like something happened. Well, what if something happened, or what if you lost control, or what if whatever. um, so that's very, very common. And but at the same time, if you start to avoid drinking, just like you can avoid any other thing, um, I would say that that's unhealthy too, because any avoidance in OCD is bad. So, I would say that, especially if you're on medication, don't drink. But again, if you're not on medication, because that's just health. If you're on medication, you shouldn't be drinking, because it says that right on your bottle that you shouldn't be drinking. But if you're not on medication and you happen to have a glass of wine or something like that, don't don't refuse it specifically so you don't get OCD the next day, because that's avoidance, and that's going to eventually catch up to you. If you one day you do have a drink, you're guaranteed to get a thought, because you keep, when you're doing that, when you're saying no specifically because of OCD, it's like you're telling your mind that, oh, I will lose control, I have a chance of losing control, and you keep repeating that message, and your mind will like put that thought aside, and if you do drink one day, it's just gonna bring you all kinds of severe OCD thoughts. So somewhere in the middle is good. Just once in a while a glass of wine, and if you're old enough and if you're not on medication, and is not a big deal, and it's good for an exposure too, because you need to be exposed to these like real life situations. What if you're at a get together one day and everybody has a glass of wine and does a toast? What are you going to say? Yeah, I can't drink, because of the thing. You could, but it should be because of your personal beliefs and not because OCD is making you. So, but that's just my view on it. I mean, everybody's kind of different on this subject, because some people just choose not to drink for their personal reasons. But my point is that don't do anything because of OCD specifically, like because of what OCD wants you to do, you know. So, and that includes the alcohol, in my opinion. Okay, another question I have here is, how do I know I am recovering? So, when you start to recover, what you will see is you will see your thoughts actually switch more. So if before you were getting, say, 2-3 thoughts a day, and you kind of got obsessed about them, thought them through, maybe tried to solve them, and they would go away and get replaced with another one. Now, as you start to disregard the thoughts, what your mind is going to do is it's going to try to get you back into a state of panic where you're reacting to the thoughts like you were before. So with fear and panic and all of that. To do that, your mind is going to send you more thoughts, because you like the fact that you're recovering. Your mind thinks you are basically crossing the street on a red light, you are putting yourself in danger, and you need to stop. Because you've conditioned your mind before that these thoughts are important. So it thinks that you are putting yourself in an important, dangerous kind of situation. So it's going to send you a lot more thoughts to try to, lead you back into the avoidance, into the reassurance, into the fear. Because you are not comfortable with feeling anxiety and fear, but your mind is, because your mind knows that if you're anxious, if you're feeling the fear, then you'll protect yourself, and that's the job that it's trying to really do. Is it's just trying to protect yourself from a scary situation, but it's not really scary. It's just you told it over time that it's scary, and now we're trying to undo it. So once you start the recovery, you will see these thoughts switch a lot, and especially if you're disregarding them in the right way, you'll see them just going around and around. So, well, what if it's this? Well, what if it's that? And then every time you're going to say, nope, that's OCD, not dealing with it. Well, what if it's this? Nope, that's OCD, not dealing with it. Well, what if it's that and that and that? Not dealing with it, and going like that all day long. And that's called like a pummeling stage, where just you're just getting basically a rain of OCD thoughts, because your mind is on high alert. Your mind doesn't like your recovery. So that's the first stage. For most people, it lasts anywhere from a week to a few weeks, and the length of it kind of depends on how long the person has been having the same thoughts. So how deep rooted this particular fear is, because the longer the person had the thought and the more deeper rooted it is, the harder it will be for the person to disregard the thought. So that's gonna last, like I said, a certain amount of time, and then after that, what you will see is and another important point is that while you're in this pummeling stage, your anxiety to each thought is going to be lower. So you're not actually going to be more stressed, because since these thoughts are switching really fast, they're not taking root and they're not bringing your emotions that high, because they're switching too fast to do that. So if before you would get 2 or 3 thoughts a day with a level like 10 out of 10 anxiety, you will get more thoughts, say 7 or 8 thoughts a day, with a level of 6 anxiety or 7. So the anxiety is lower, but there's more thoughts, and this will kind of continue as you go on. So later, after the pummeling stage, you will still get quite a bit of thoughts, but the anxiety will keep going lower. So you'll get maybe not so many though, like 4 or 5 thoughts a day. Maybe the anxiety level would be not like 6, but like say a 5 or a 4, and it's just going to keep going lower and lower until it's going to be just a whisper in your mind. Well, what if it's this? What if it's that? Something like that, right? But it's not going to give you that much of an anxiety basically anymore, and you'll be able to easily dismiss it. But so the first and the most important part of the OCD recovery is the first pummeling stage, because it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks, because your mind will pull out all the stops to get you back into anxiety, and you just have to be ready, and just be ready for the battle, because there's going to be a battle. And make sure you're doing really well in the beginning, so you don't kind of stay and get stuck in this pummeling stage. Because if you get stuck in the pummeling stage, that means like you'll start to disregard the thoughts actively. Then your mind will send you some one thought that gets you. It gets you, and then you start to do reassurance. Then you get good and start to do to disregard again, and then you get more pummeling. So you become kind of stuck in that first stage, and it's such a painful stage that it's just better to kind of buckle down, put everything else in your life aside, and just get through this time. And when I say put everything else aside, I mean mostly like the stressors that you're experiencing in your life. Also, by the way, as I'm talking, please feel free to ask a question, because I'm talking, but I'll stop if there's a question. But um, basically, you want to be occupied. So if you have a lot of stuff going on in your mind, that's okay. But at the same time, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're not adding stress. So busy versus stressed and busy. Stressed and busy is bad. Just busy, going about your day, going about your life, filling your life with a lot of activity is okay. Just and like not negative activity. Try not to deal with negative people, not watching negative shows. Do meditation, do yoga. If you have nothing going on in your life and you feel like you have a lot of free time where OCD gets you, fill it with going to a yoga class or doing meditation or something like that. But just fill it with something so your mind is not hyper focusing on OCD specifically. Okay, and I think I have one more question here, if I'm not mistaken. How can I estimate the speed of my recovery? So the speed of your recovery largely depends on how long you've had OCD. So, and not so much even OCD generally, but specifically the thought that you're having now. So, for example, when I talk to clients, in our first meeting, or Skype session, I don't actually meet with clients in person. I do Skype or calls. I always ask not specifics about the obsession, because obsessions switch and there's no point, it's a lot of the times it's very personal, so we don't really go into specifics of the obsession. It's not really relevant to the recovery. As much as it might seem like it is, it's really not. But I am always very, very interested in how long the person had this particular thought, and the timing, how long did they have the previous thought for, and all of everything to do with the timing is extremely important, and because it tells me how fast they'll recover. And also I always ask, like, how have they been doing, how much reassurance they're seeking, because that's also important for me to kind of guess at, give them like an estimated time of how long it will take them to recover. Because sometimes people go really fast with their recovery, they're very strong, they're able to handle it, and other people go a little bit slower. So the person needs to prepare for their specific way of recovery. And there's no length of time that's, you know, better than another length. I mean, obviously everybody wants to recover in the fastest amount possible, but you know, I have to tell you too that speed is not always your friend with this, because you're reprogramming your mind. So if you go through it too fast, your mind might not catch on, and it'll be harder for you to do it. And I feel like if you go through it too fast, it doesn't, the recovery process doesn't get retained as well. So you will feel that, like, next, so say for example, if in the next 20 years you get another OCD thought, you have a like a higher chance of relapse if you went through the recovery very fast the first time, because you won't remember the process as well, you know. It's a lot of the time. So just don't, not all the time, but you know, some of the time. So I'm just saying that if you're going a little slower, don't feel bad. There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody, you're getting from point A to point B. Point A is where you are now, point B is your recovery, you know, so like full recovery. So that's the thing is, you know, I mean, everybody's going to get to point B. Everybody who's trying and who's doing it is going to get to point B at some point, sooner or later, you know. So, okay, so yeah, as usual, I diverted away from the question. So the speed of the recovery. So the speed works out like this. If you had your current thought for less than 6 months, it will take you approximately the amount of, this is in my experience, okay? Because like I said, I talk to a lot of clients, I have a lot of experience, and in my own experience of recovering as well. So I can usually guess it pretty well. So yes, if you had your current OCD thought for less than 6 months, it will take you about the same time that you had the thought for to recover. So say for example, if you had a thought for a month, it will take you a month to recover in my recovery program, right? Or following my recovery program. So if you had the thought for 2 months, it would take you almost 2 months to recover. If you had the thought for 3 months, I find that still it will take you about 2 months to recover. So usually, you know, if it's under 6 months, it takes around a month, 2 months to recover. Okay. If you just had it for a few weeks and you kind of got, you know, on top of the recovery very fast, then you'll have a higher chance of recovering fast, right? But if you kind of you didn't know what it was, like maybe like me, and just kept going around and around, then it's a little slower. Now, if your OCD has lasted more than 6 months, so say a year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, it will take you about 6 months to recover from the thought. Unless it's like tens and tens of years. If that's true, then it'll take you maybe about a year to recover. But if it's under 10 years but over 6 months, I would say about 6 months to recover. And by recover, I mean actually really try. You know, not just like, oh, you know, I read Ali's book, I listened to a few videos, you know, but then I seek reassurance every once in a while. No, you really need to try, and your reassurance needs to be cut down to about, I would say at least by 70%. So whatever you're doing now, 70% of that needs to be gone, you know, and then you will be in a state of recovery, because 50 is just you moving back, one step forward, one step back. One day you seek reassurance, one day you don't. One situation you worry about and ruminate, one you don't. You're not moving anywhere. That's not recovery. You're just taking a step forward and immediately taking a step back, or next time taking a step back. So you need to be at least at 70%, but 80 would be, of course, better. So anyways, that I hope that answers these questions. If you guys have another question, please feel free to ask me now. If not, I will be here tomorrow again. and I'm really enjoying this. I feel like I feel like I really need to do this, and I'm glad that it's actually like working out now, because at first we had some problems with the streaming and this and that. So it seems very good, and hopefully, I'll have more questions, and I can help. I mean, I'm here to help in any way I can. So um, please, feel free to ask. Thank you guys for watching today. I guess there's no more questions, and I will see you tomorrow.